I'm Nadia Glover, the Inclusive Engagement Coordinator at Wofford College, and I also serve as a member of Wofford College's 2021 Virtual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee. And on behalf of our committee, welcome and thank you for being here today. As a collective, the Wofford College Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee has a social responsibility to acknowledge the historical context in which Wofford currently exists. As a result, we acknowledge that we gather as an institution of higher learning on the ancestral lands of Indigenous peoples, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself, and thank enrolled members of the Cherokee Nation and their tribes for their involvement in helping the college learn more about the people who are stewards of the land Wofford currently occupies. We also acknowledge the enslaved Africans who labored to lay the physical foundations of the college. As a result, this committee commits to actively engaging and learning about the history of the lands we occupy, how to be better stewards of it, and continue to honor with intention and respect the historical and current significance of Indigenous and enslaved people who suffer in the creation of the college and who are credited for its current existence. So thank you all for joining today's session, a community conversation with City of Spartanburg's Chief of Police, Alonzo Thompson, in celebration of Wofford College's 2021 Virtual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Week celebration. As a reminder, the theme for this year's celebration is keeping the same energy. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. In reflecting on the racial injustices and losses that we've experienced as individuals and as a collective community during 2020, it is paramount to highlight all that we've learned in the past year and commit to ensuring that we keep the same energy by continuing to use the lessons we've learned to contribute to a more equitable community, which Dr. King outlined in a lesser quoted section of his I Have a Dream speech, defined as a community where people of color and difference, and Black people in particular, are no longer the victims of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. Nearly 6 decades after Dr. King's speech, those horrors were thrust into light through video footage that documented the murder of George Floyd, who was killed by police officers as he pleaded for his life for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. The dehumanization that Dr. King mentioned and the dehumanization that Mr. Floyd, his family, and so many others suffer has led states, cities, and municipalities to reevaluate race, equity, and policing. However, for some police departments, like the city of Spartanburg, community policing, which places an emphasis on humanizing all individuals and centering equity and empathy, has been a major tenet of the institutional fabric of the force. And on a more personal note, as a staff member of Wofford and a woman who was born and raised and continues to call upstate South Carolina home, the city of Spartanburg police have treated me with so much respect and civility, which is more than appreciated, especially during a time where it's so apparent that others haven't been as fortunate. In framing our discussion today, first I will introduce Chief Thompson, then the Chief will answer a series of carefully curated questions regarding issues within policing, community policing, and its ability to possibly lift our national policy from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of human dignity, as Dr. King prophesied. Once I've exhausted all the questions, we will transition to a Q&A portion of the program. As attendees, you can privately submit your questions to Mrs. Sarah Milani for Chief Thompson to answer during the Q&A portion of the program. We will also make every effort to answer as many questions as possible. However, we may not be able to get to every single one. And one final logistical note, in order to have a productive conversation, any attendee who is engaging in disrespectful, harassing, or racist behavior will be removed from the session. Chief Thompson, thank you so much for being here. I'll now introduce you.
Thank you.
Chief Alonzo Thompson grew up in North Carolina and graduated from the University of North Carolina of Chapel Hill in 1982 with a BA degree in political science. He is a graduate of the 183rd session of the FBI National Academy and a graduate of the DEA Drug Unit Commander Academy number 55. He also completed the Public Executive Leadership Academy held at the School of Government of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Chief Thompson served 30 years with the Winston-Salem Police Department and retired from the agency in January 2014 after having attained the rank of Assistant Chief. Chief Alonzo Thompson assumed the role of Chief of Police for the city of Spartanburg on February 1st, 2014. He's an active member of the International Association of Police Chiefs, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, the South Carolina Police Chiefs Association, and the FBI National Academy of Associates, South Carolina chapter. Chief Thompson chairs the Boys and Girls Clubs of the Upstate. and he serves on the board of directors for AMI Kids White Pines, Charles Lee Center, 50 Upstate Senior Wellness Initiative, Mobile Meals, and the Spartanburg Academic Movement. He's also a member of the Spartanburg Racial Equity Collaborative. Chief Thompson is a graduate of the South Carolina Diversity Leadership Institute Upstate Class of 2017 and the fall of 2014 of the Richard W. Riley Institute at Furman University. He also completed the Leadership Spartanburg Class of 2014 to 2015 and serves on the board of regents of the Leadership Spartanburg Alumni Association. He's also a graduate of the Spartanburg Regional Health System 2017 Regional Fellows Leadership Program. Chief Thompson is a member of the Rotary Club of Spartanburg and the Southside Lions Club. He's also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Chief Thompson is married to Katrina Amelia Thompson, the Chief of Police of Winston-Salem, North Carolina Police Department, and cherishes his responsibilities as a father to the couple's two children, Allison Blakely and Christopher Aaron. So Chief Thompson, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Well, I am honored by the invitation and consider it a privilege to be here, especially to celebrate Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who was world-renowned and one of America's greatest treasures, in my opinion. So to have the opportunity to come speak to the citizens which I serve, which I always welcome, as I said before, I consider it a tremendous privilege. So thank you very much for being here, and remind me to have my executive assistants to shorten up all that stuff is not that important. The most thing I'm proud of there is I'm the father of Allison and Christopher.
So as I alluded to in my opening remarks, our conversation today is based on the desire to discuss community policing and its ability to possibly lift our national policy from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of human dignity, as Dr. King prophesies. Before we discuss community policing as a possible solution, let's first discuss what Dr. King called the quicksand of racial injustice as it relates to policing specifically. One example of this is police brutality, which systematically, since the founding of this country and law enforcement as a profession, has disproportionately impacted communities of color and has in some communities caused a divide between police and the communities they serve. Is there a possible path forward that recognizes the traumatic experiences that communities have to endure?
The short answer is yes. Law enforcement is a noble profession, which I'm proud to be a member of. However, policing has had a darker side in the past. In fact, when I told my mother that I was entering the field of law enforcement, she was like, "Well, I done sent you off to school to go and get into policing," because of all the negative encounters and that had been historically done in the Black community. But with that being said, although I understand the mistrust and distrust, I informed, I said, "Mom, if I'm ever going to make a difference, someone has to get involved and be engaged and help bring it, become the change we want it to be." And so I found myself in law enforcement in 1984, as mentioned in my bio. And I had the opportunity as a chief to go out to International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference back in the fall of 2016. And there, the IACP chief, it was a Chief Terrence Cunningham from Wesley, Massachusetts. He was a chief at the time. And he did something that I thought was extremely remarkable and brave. On that date, doing a speech before the entire convention, in my opinion, he took that first step for us to have that path forward when it comes to enhancing police community relations in our country. He said, he basically gave a formal apology to the nation's minority population for the actions of the past and the role that our profession has played in society's historical mistreatment of people of color. And as a member there, and knowing that there were several amongst us who did not share that sentiment, but I know that for us to make a difference, we have to acknowledge that law enforcement has not always been a force for good, especially in the Black community and other people and other communities of color. So to me, I not only saw him, but I heard him, and I felt that first step being made. So I really, at every opportunity, encourage my fellow law enforcement executives, and obviously those that I oversee and work with on a day-to-day basis, that, as Dr. King would say, the time is always right to do right. And so we have the capacity to change, and then we have to have the willingness to. We can't be defensive, resentful, or what have you. We have to be open that there has to be some changes in law enforcement because the people who we serve are demanding.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
And thinking about best practices and training and other initiatives intended to avoid instances of police brutality, it's important to note that prior to the murder of George Floyd, the Minneapolis Police Department was regarded as one of the most diverse, forward-thinking, well-trained forces in the country. And as a result, some policing reform groups have called for the abolishment of police forces across the country, professing that if a police officer from one of the best, most diverse police forces in the country can use prohibited maneuvers on individual, what hope is there for any other police forces to effectively protect and serve their community?
Well, before I even answer that question, please know this, that those of us in law enforcement that are true to the profession hates poor police conduct worse than anybody, because it makes a very hard job even more difficult. But with that said, when I hear people say they want to dissolve or defund the police, I'm not, again, it doesn't anger me or cause me to be defensive. What I hear is we need change, because the reality of it is, I don't see either one of those things happening. First off, as far as defunding us, we were never funded entirely to do a lot of the things that we are asked to do, dealing with mental health and the homeless and some of the other things that have been added to what we do on a day-to-day basis. But with that said, we're going to step up and do what is asked by our community. We're a profession that's filled with imperfect people. We make some mistakes, and sometimes there's even intentional wrongdoing, which is always unacceptable. And it's one of those things where I pray every day that God bless me more with faith, hope, and love, and I will never let anyone take my hope in a better tomorrow, especially when it comes to law enforcement. I'm an eternal optimist. I believe that we can do better in serving those we want to protect and to serve. And it begins, I think, first and foremost. For example, this morning, I hired another, what I feel is a high character person to bring on into our agency. We'll send them off to get the best training we can. That'll include everything from racial equity, de-escalation, and basically with the values that align with our community. We are a community-oriented policing agency that believes not only that philosophy, but also in the actions that we take. And it emphasizes citizen involvement, nurturing partnerships, and being proactive as opposed to being reactive in dealing with problems. So it's one of those things where I do believe that we should all remain hopeful. Like I said, I'm not going to let anyone steal my joy nor my hope, and I'm committed to doing all I can to bring about that change that I, as a law enforcement professional, see, and also what the community that I serve demands.
Right. Exactly. I really like that, not letting anyone steal your hope. It's important. And so based on your previous response, Chief Thompson, it seems as though the philosophy of promoting organizational strategies that support the systemic use of partnerships and problem-solving techniques to proactively address the immediate conditions that give rise to public safety issues or community policing may be a way to bridge the gap between the police and communities that have experienced harms from the police. Would you agree?
Yes, most definitely. One thing I found during my years in being in a service organization that provides service to people, law enforcement and certain other entities are positioned to do things to or for people, which is well intended usually. However, I feel we provide better service and get better results when we do things with people, being inclusive, especially those people who are going to be impacted directly by our actions. So having that involvement, that engagement, I think is extremely important. And as I mentioned in the previous question or answer, I should say, we embrace community-oriented policing, but more importantly, we put it into action. And also, the broader motto of most law enforcement agencies across the United States is to protect and serve, or to serve and protect. But we even go a little bit more further. We go further here, more specific to us in the Spartanburg community, by our motto being policing in partnership, because we know how important that is that we as a policing body has to work intimately with those that we serve. And public safety is the entire community's responsibility. We're the tip of the spear. Yeah, we're going to go out and investigate the crashes and make the arrest and do searches and things along those lines. But the overall wellness and of this community is really based on how well we work with our citizens.
Right, right. And so I mentioned in my remarks that the city of Spartanburg's law enforcement officials are some of the best people that I've met since being here. And it's my opinion that the respect and professionalism and the care of the officers, lieutenants, and the deputy chief is in large part a result of the leadership that they see in you and are emulating. And so in your opinion, how's the city of Spartanburg police contributed to equity in policing and rates?
Well, you're too kind. I appreciate the compliment, but I've been blessed to work with a fantastic group of people, many who were hired prior to my coming. But I think, I know since I have been here the past 7 years, one of the most important things I do to be of good service to this community and to those officers I find here with hire good people, those who possess servants' hearts. That to me is key. I can find people who can shoot, run, fight, whatever else, but if a person don't have the right attitude and be blessed with that servant's hearts and answer that call of law enforcement the right way, then they can't be a part of our agency. It doesn't fit the culture that we try to establish here. So once we hire someone on, as I did this morning, young lady, we're going to indoctrinate her in the culture of the Spartanburg Police Department, which we try to do things in the right way, at the right time, and for the right reasons. That's what we try to do each and every day. And I try to make things chief-proof. I mean, we got all kinds of policies, statutes, and procedures and whatever. But I said, folks, if you just remember to do this, and I've learned this in my soon-to-be 37 years in law enforcement, if you treat each person that you encounter, regardless of the situation, the way you would want someone to treat your most beloved, your mother, your father, your grandparents, your favorite Uncle Bob, Aunt Sue, your child, whoever it may be, you can't go wrong. You're not going to cut corners. You're going to do everything you can to address whatever issues at hand. You're going to do it in a fair and equitable way, and you're going to be respectful, and you're going to try to resolve whatever that issue is at hand. So that's one of the things that I preach, and I try to demonstrate, and my people, fortunately, have followed suit. But again, they were a tremendous organization before I came. I like to think that we've made it a little better since my being here. But I'm also encouraged about that relationship. There are formal types of things that we do to engage the public during non-contentious times, such as, formal settings when we have National Night Out. We have things like Shop with a Cop, where we take underprivileged kids shopping for Christmas. I have had cuts and conversations with the chief where I've gone to barbershops and spoke with young men there to address questions or concerns they may have had. We also did some coffee with the cops, which is pretty cool, where we will go to a restaurant, a McDonald's or a Chick-fil-A, and just meet and mingle with people there who are, getting a little breakfast. And one of my all-time favorites is High Five Fridays, when we go to some of our schools, and when the kids come in on Fridays, we tell them, hey, have a great weekend. We're so proud of you. And we're giving them high fives. And they're tickled when they see all of us out there in the front meeting and greeting them, because sometimes that may be the only positive encouragement they may get before they go home. So that's the formal type of way, but also stress volunteerism. As was mentioned in my bio, I chair the Boys and Girls Club. At one time, I was in like 12 organizations. I had to pare that down to about 6. It was kind of stretching a little thin, but me and my staff and other members of my team, we do things such as Habitat for Humanity, Charles Lee Center, Partners for Active Living, AMI Kids, White Pines, Mobile Mills. So we try to do a number of things, as I said, during non-contentious time, to show that we're part of the community and that we care in a very deep and impactful way. A lot of us coach at schools, we mentor, we tutor youth in our community. So we try to be engaged and get people to see us more than just those who are writing that traffic citation or investigating that crime or that horrific incident. And I think that's what really makes a difference here in Spartanburg community, that they see that we're truly involved and that we care, and on and off duty, in and out of uniform.
Right, definitely. Thanks for that. And so for my final question, in thinking about Dr. King's and his life and legacy, what practice or initiative would you like to see institutionalized within police forces across the country to lift our national policy from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of human dignity?
Well, we have to listen to those who we serve. You're our bosses, and I think that's extremely important. And I know after some of the incidents of this past summer, you had the hashtag 8can'twait. My thing is we need to listen to that, and where there's merit, we need to respond in a positive way to the concerns that are raised in that particular, in that particular incident. Also, I would say that we should embrace the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. This was something that was done back during President Obama's term, where he put together some of the best minds there were, not just in law enforcement, but academia, activist groups, community members, to talk about policing. And there was basically 6 pillars they were to focus on. The first being building trust and legitimacy, policy and oversight, technology and social media, community policing, crime reduction, training and education, and officer safety and well-being. And they came up with the final report like in May of 2015. And there were some underlying things which I think are extremely important if we're ever going to get to where we need to be. And it talked about changing police culture. We have to go from being warriors to guardians, which I think is extremely important because it takes on a whole different mindset. During this past spring and summer when we had a lot of our unrest, I was real adamant when I spoke with my team to say the folks out here who are protesting are not enemy combatants. We're not warriors, we're guardians. We're going to protect their right to address or redress their grievances with their government. And so that was extremely important. Also, number 2, we are to embrace community policing. That philosophy, not just a philosophy the way we think, but what we do. It's a way of doing business. Third, we want to ensure fair and impartial policing. I'm sure y'all have heard the term of procedural justice, and I'll go on a little bit more about that in a moment. And we want to build community capital, which, as I mentioned, through positive interactions, as I just spoke of, like with both formal and informal interaction with our citizenry during non-contentious times. And we want to pay attention to the officers' wellness and safety. We see a lot, and we internalize a lot. So us being able to have mental health and social and different physical assistance at times is very important for overall health and well-being. And 6 is technology. But the body-worn cameras and less lethal weapon options are extremely important. And those were the things that were being recommended or stressed that was sent out to law enforcement. And a large number of us have adopted those and have tried to follow the recommendations, which I have this here. It's a lot. It's a large study. Y'all can see this. But they did have a smaller implementation booklet that some folks have utilized and others possibly not. Based on some of the things that I've seen across the country, I can tell you that there are some agencies that are not performing perhaps as closely as I would like to see them. But again, they're being responsive to their community, and I have to be responsible, control mine, and hopefully we'll lead by example. But all the recommendations are important. And the one that I think that's really kind of, or have had some of the most negative impact that led to some of the unfortunate incidents and untimely and senseless deaths of this past spring and summer, and even some years prior, because it's been a number, unfortunately, of officers involved killings that were questionable at best. But procedural justice is the key, and there's 4 principles on that. We all got to go in this with treating people with dignity and respect. 1, 2, giving the individual's voice during our encounters. Let the person be heard and kind of have the opportunity to explain. Now, you may not have the opportunity all the time, but you let people have voice. And then be as neutral and as transparent as your decision making as possible, and then convey, trustworthy motives. Tell them what's going to happen and why. and be sincere in what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And one other thing that I will mention that I think is huge is clear accreditation. And this is big. There's 18,000 law enforcement agencies, federal, state, local, and tribal in the United States. And of that are accredited by, let me back up, CALEA, basically the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement, was an entity that was created back in 1979 by the four preeminent law enforcement executive management entities that exist. IACP, as I mentioned before, which is International Association of Chiefs of Police, NOBLE, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, the National Sheriff's Association, and PERF, which is the Police Executive Research Forum. They created these in a joint effort, accreditation standards using the best practices there is. And as I mentioned, of all of the 18,000 agencies that we have, and 15,400 of them being police and sheriff's department, there's less than 1,200 that are accredited, which is just right at 7%. And that's unfortunate, but I'm proud to say that we at the Spartanburg Police Department have been accredited since 1999. And we're getting our reaccreditation for the 7th time this coming spring. They just came and did an assessment for us in the month of December. And so it's one of those things. I'm very proud of the fact that we're accredited by this entity, CALEA, because it accredits agencies both nationally and internationally. And we also have state accreditation through the South Carolina Police Accreditation Coalition. And we were reaccredited there back in September. So we're putting forth the effort, the time, the money, the resources to try to ensure that we're doing the best that we can by the people that we serve. And I think it's worth every penny. Not a perfect organization, not suggesting any way, by any stretch. Like I said, we're imperfect people, and we will sometimes make mistakes despite our best efforts. And we work one of those jobs, even when you do everything right, it can still raise questions or cause concerns, even when it's right legally, by any measure. Like I said, policing, there are certain aspects are not pretty. Using deadly force, even when it's justified, it's not a pretty thing. But me, like all of us who in law enforcement, we come to work every day knowing that we may lose our life, but by the same time may have to take someone's as well if the situation dictates. But you want to make sure that you're doing all you can so you know your people know how and when, as I say, that they do the things the right way at the right time for the right reasons. And that's so important that we do that. And it starts with hiring, training, oversight, and review. And some of that review, a lot of it's internal, obviously, but I'm not opposed to external review either. So, but I know that was a long answer, my apologies, but hopefully that addressed the concern that you raised.
Oh, definitely. Thank you so much, Chief Thompson, for joining us in the discussion today and the celebration of the legacy of Dr. King. I also just thank you for your service to the city of Spartanburg. And
I'm ready to do it.
Yeah, it's been so nice getting to know you. Now we'll take a few questions from the audience. And so if you have any questions for Chief Thompson, please, as I said before, submit them to Sarah Milani and she'll share them with us. But the first question that we have is, considering the global impact as well as the significant impact in South Carolina that we've seen from COVID-19, what are the plans that the City of Spartanburg Police have to talk with bars and restaurants downtown that may be allowing more people than notified or allowed to gather in their areas or even without masks?
Well, we've had a series of executive orders, and obviously that the governor has. And I have folks that will go out and periodically check those places where masks are required, such as going to the grocery store or a drugstore, those things along those lines. We do periodic checks. We found that when we do this, most folks are compliant, but we're obviously going to have some people not come into compliance. Unfortunately, a lot of the mask wearing and some of the recommendations of CDC have not been adhered to because it's been so politicized. We have been able to, after consulting with legal, there are some civil remedies. But most of the time when we approach people about their mask or not separating, they comply with our request. So we have not had to cite anyone to date for any type of civil penalty. But it's a tough battle because of the politicalization that has taken place. I'm hoping that that changes as we see unfortunately see the death toll rise and the sickness. I think there's very few people right now that does not know someone that has had COVID or may have lost a family member to COVID. I know that's true for me. So it's one of those things where we do take it seriously. And we do try to go and do the spot checks and encourage and educate. In fact, the city has gone as far to hire a person now that is their sole job, is to go to some of these places to remind them of the safety precautions laid down by CDC. In addition, my people, as I said, I designate some of our folks in crime prevention to go out and to do the spot checks. We have masks that we provide to businesses that may not have a large supply, and say, here you go, so you can have these for your patrons. So we're doing what we can. Unfortunately, it does not cover everyone, and we do respect a lot for people to comply. And hopefully we're getting more of that as the severity of this disease linger. I'm just hoping, though, that because we do have the vaccine, that people let their guard down, because I think it's been stressed. The vaccine is good, but we're gonna still have to keep the mask, the social distancing, and the hand washing to try to keep ourselves safe. Hopefully that was responsive to your question.
Well, here's hoping that we can all continue to do our part to take care of each other, for sure. The next question we have here, and you talked a bit about this before, but how could the department better be organized or differently organized or supported even to cover some of those areas where there's less funding or there's still a need for training to be managed, such as managing mental health issues? Well,
one of the things that we rely a lot on grants, and we try to partner with the Mental Health Association, for example. Same thing with the Homeless Coalition. We try to engage within this public-private partnerships to get not just funding, but also training, and to try to know what resources are available, so we know what lever to pull to get persons that we come in contact the type of help that they need. So where we may be lacking in either personnel or funding, we do reach out, and like I said, with any entity. A lot of our as I said, whether it's mental health, homeless, you name it, DV, we'll write joint grants where we're part of it. So we enhance our chances of getting money to help fund some of the projects and initiatives that are put forth by those entities or us that are there to help a target population that we're trying to assist.
Definitely. The last question that we have, thank you for that. The last question that we have that was shared in the chat is that you talked a bit about the tension, specifically the racial tension that we all experienced over the summer especially. But how would you describe the state of race relations in Spartanburg during this time? What are some of the challenges that you see, and what are some of the ways that you continue to feel hopeful, which you talked about before?
Well, I was very pleased, to be totally honest, with the response of most of the residents that live here in Spartanburg. I think the city, and I've had the opportunity to live in a number of places. Racism exists everywhere, but the efforts that I see in our city to address racism, systemic racism in particular, I think is extremely important. And our council has come out and basically apologized for mistreatment of people of color, Blacks in particular, in the years past by city government. We, in partnership with people in our community, the mad artists who we unfortunately just lost, and others in this community, we were able to put the Black Lives Matters in front of City Hall on the street. And again, we're willing to talk, we're willing to sit at the table and listen and try to be responsive and actually hear and then do some positive action. We did not have some of the issues here because I think of some of the foundational work we laid by being respectful and responsive. In fact, I'll never forget the first day though, that we had issues here. It was like me and four other members of my team out near the building when about 250 people came up. Pretty upset, to say the least. And it was a situation where I had to get them to understand we hear you. It could have been a bad situation, but I said where I talked, I walked with them. And during my walking with them, several people say, well, the police here, y'all okay, y'all are cool. But, it's what they're doing here, here, and here. And I said, well, go there, there, and there. but I understood. It was a nationwide issue. I feel it too. Racism is real. I've lived it. I've experienced it. That's why I'm in law enforcement, because it has not always been fair and equitable. I'm keenly aware of that. But by the same token, I'm one of those who acknowledge that progress has been made, even though there's more work to be done. But as I said before, I'm not going to let anyone steal my hope. I don't hate to do this. I can't deny my God or my faith. I protect the constitutional freedom of everyone to believe in whoever they believe. But I lean on my God and the hope that I get from him. And so I'm going to always, Dr. King said, we may have a definitive defeat, but hope is infinite. That's kind of paraphrase. Don't let anyone take your hope. Evil can be triumphed for just a definitive amount of time, but hope should never be destroyed. And I believe that. So I just think that we have tried to be a part of our community. And as a result of that, I think people recognize that we are here for them. We're not some entity over here that just comes in, rain, pain, and leave. That we're intimately involved and engaged. And so I think we have been able to build some mutual respect and trust. Now, is that across the board? Everyone know, but I'll take the wins. We'll build those relationships one person at a time, if need be.
Right, exactly. And so it looks like the last question that we have here is considering the collaboration and the opportunity for community policing. Do you support the idea of shifting responsibility to mental health professionals, either to replace or assist the police?
I do. And in fact, what I will tell you, there's one initiative we got going now where mental health will come out with us on certain situations, which is good. They're on call because they see the need to step up. Because the bottom line is so much fall on law enforcement because we're a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, 365, 366 on a leap year entity that who do you call when everyone else is closed and unavailable? You call the police. So we have a stack of hats that we wear. So we have to kind of have a little knowledge about everything, but we're not a master of some of the things that we're having to deal with. So it goes back to what I was saying, knowing who to call and how soon we can get people help. So to me, I would welcome mental health, DV advocates, folks who are dealing with homeless issues, whatever it may be. If they want to come and take part of that, that's fine. But this is the thing. When those situations are physical or violent, those professionals still going to need our assistance. So some of it won't be a matter of us being able to hand some things off as neatly as we think because of the inherent risk of a lot of what we do until a situation is calm, they can come in and render their service. But I do welcome having the experts to come out and engage earlier, because I think the sooner we can have intervention on some of the issues that we face, the better results we will ultimately have. So some of the hats, I'll be glad, I got about 12, so I'll be glad that somebody have about 3 or 4 or half of them if we could. But the reality of it is, I realize that we're still gonna get a number of those calls. Even the people who claim to hate us. I remember when I was back in the street in Winston-Salem, haven't heard it since I've been here, even though I still know that sentiment exists in some circles. People, be playing those songs, excuse my language, F the police and we hate the police or whatever else. But time the pain comes, the first person crying dial 911 is that person who hated us a few months ago. I found out when people are hit with certain stressors, that the faithless will cry out for God. Those who hate the police will call us, and the one that says, lips that touch liquor never touch mine. I'll never curse. They'll say some curse words like you've never heard when when the right situation hits. But I tell people, but God and the police and the curse word are generally going to happen when things go bad. So that's kind of what happens.
Sure. It looks like we had one more question sneak in.
Yes.
I think we have enough time to go for it.
Hey, I'll reach all day. If we don't get the master today, I'll come back tomorrow.
This question does have a more personal note to it.
Yes.
It says that you mentioned in your introduction that your wife is also a police chief.
Yes.
So how have the two of you motivated and pushed each other in your roles? And I also will add to that, what advice do you have for us on the call and just community members to stay motivated in this continued connection that we're building between the community and the police?
Well, my wife and I, we met back in Winston-Salem, and we've kind of supported each other. Now we have a unique relationship with me being here the past 7 years. We date on the weekends, to be totally honest. That's probably the only reason she keeps me. But it's one of those things we both know how important this role is. Again, I'm a Dr. King fan. So if a man don't know what he'll die for, he's not fit to live. I know I love the people that I serve. I've strapped on a gun and a vest for the past 37 years, except for depending on the assignment. I don't have my vest on now, but I do have a gun. I leave home every day, just like she does. And those of us in law enforcement, knowing again, we will give a life no greater love than mandate our life for a friend. In our case, we don't have to be a friend. It's just another fellow human being who we respect and love you because you're a human being. And that's our call. And so that, whether it's training, bottom line is when we talk, we have debriefings every night. She'll call me about 11:30 after she watch your local news, and we'll talk about 12 or 12:30. And she'll tell me what happened in her day, and I'll mention briefly mine. I try to let it go when I leave, but she can't. But that's okay. I'm going to be there for her. That's what she needs. So we do push each other a great deal. I'm extremely proud of her. I tell them, I made an assistant chief. She made all the way to the top, so she went up me back there. But I'm proud of her. I'm glad. So we just share, and it's been a good relationship. It's stressful, but we find a way through our faith, and just when we have free time to to energize and stay at it. And I would say, you can't quit. Again, Dr. King said we're all in the same. We came over in different ships. We're in the same boat now. We got to learn how to live with one another, work with one another, continue to love one another to make things better. And I see my role, just like my wife does, see our role being in law enforcement to help make that happen, to help form that more perfect union by bringing some fairness and equity. And I'm not suggesting in any way, and I don't think most people believe that all police are bad folks, because I can tell you right now, I said overwhelming majority are good people, and they go out each and every day and try to do the job the right way. But I do understand when those of us in the profession don't, it's not good. There's no way around that. But like any profession, we have people that shouldn't be in it, and I'll be the first one to root them out for the reasons I mentioned. Not just because it make our job harder, but because it's not right for them not to treat those who we serve in the right way. So hopefully I answered your question.
Definitely. Chief Thompson, thank you so much for your time here today. I truly enjoyed it, and just thank you again for all the kindness that you so freely share with not just us as a Wofford community, but the greater Spartanburg community.
Well, thank you. And if I could just leave you with this, one last Dr. Kingism, and I'll tell you why I have hope. I have faith in my God. There's no question about that. But I also have faith in you all. I have faith in the young folks. I have faith in those that when it comes to education, Dr. King said, intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education. I think Wofford and other institutions of higher learning are doing just that. They're bringing in young men and women of high character who are extremely intelligent. And my faith and hope of a better tomorrow for our country rests in you all and the work that you do. So I thank you. And for those participating, and those who want to make a difference in the career of law enforcement, please come on down and see me. I can use a little help.
So as we close today's session, I'd also like to take some time to uplift my colleagues on the Wofford College's 2021 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee for their efforts in today's celebration. And so Dean Taifa Alexander, Ian Brown, Dr. Begonia Caballero, Brianna Dogan, Park Faison, Angela Feller, Isaiah Franco, Dr. Boyce Lawton, Marshall McDill, De'Aaron McGowan, Sarah Milani, Olivia Miller, Kia Kaiser, Titasia Robinson, Lee Smith, Dr. Tasha Smith-Tyus, Jesselyn Story, and James Stooks. So this concludes our 2021 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. virtual celebration program today. The community conversation with City of Spartanburg Chief of Police, Alonzo Thompson. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you.
You all have a great night.
Thank you.
Chief Smith, I didn't realize I'm a Winston-Salemite myself. I spent my first